Bonjour et bienvenue sur le site champagnejayne.com. G'day, I'm Champagne Jayne. I help you create memorable champagne experiences through events, education, tours and consulting. Welcome to another edition of Champagne Jayne TV. Cheers! Now today we're here to talk about something extraordinary. British bubbles. Yes, can you believe it? That in the UK, when you think of a cold, wet country, they're actually making world-class sparkling wine. Now, Camel Valley was planted in the late 1980s. It's actually a property that was originally set up for sheep farming, and the owner of this property, Bob Lindo, converted it to grapes. He had his and her vineyards to start, and it's now become the leading sparkling wine in the UK. This is the only sparkling wine that Fortnum and Mason have under their own label. This wine here is made from Blanc, which is a German hybrid grape, very much suited to the damp and cooler conditions in the UK. Camel Valley actually won the Sparkling Wine of the Year this year in 2010, and here to tell us more about English vineyards and how to make sparkling wine in the UK are Bob and Sam Lindo, the winemaking team from Camel Valley. I hope you enjoy this very special episode of Champagne Jayne TV. Cheers!
I'm Bob Lindo from Camel Valley. This is interesting for me because there was a wave of growers before me who actually, some of them made quite nice wine, but they couldn't give it away. And then the next wave was probably us and a few other people like us, where we got a bit more professional and we learned how to make it. We created nice places for people to visit without concentrating on restaurants, just nice places to do wine. But it's growing. But what's happening now is we're now at the next phase where entrepreneurs and investors are joining in, and I'm not sure it's going to work because the difference between England and everywhere else in the world is just yields.
Yeah.
England yields are very low, and it's not something, luckily, I think we're lucky, it's not something you can enter to make a fortune. It's something you can enter if you really want to grow grapes, make wine, meet people, live that life, do that work. So if you want to do the work, if you want to tuck in vines, you want to clean tanks, you want to meet people, it's a great place to do it. If you want to become the next Robert Mondavi, perhaps not.
Okay, I'm with you. Do you think, when you say that yields are low in England, wouldn't that have been the case in, say, in Champagne centuries ago, and that's more about development? And
No, it's just about warmth. It's to do with the warmth of flowering, and it's very variable in England to a great extent. I mean, we can have, in 1976 we had over 30 degrees for a number of days in the summer. We've had years since then where there haven't been enough degree days to ripen an apple.
Yep.
So you get tremendous variations, which investors will soon get fed up with. You know, for people who are interested in it, it's part of the fun, the pleasure and the enjoyment that when you get a great year, you've been waiting for it for 4 or 5 years. You're not going to expect it next year if you had it last year. You know, it's the pleasure in it, is that it isn't something you can guarantee and bank on. So it doesn't become a grind or, you know, a merry-go-round of the same thing every year.
And the wines that you're producing are actually quite different. You're looking for a different character than in Champagne.
Yeah, we're trying to be distinctive. We're trying to have a reason to do this, and the reason to do this is to make something different, something distinctive, something new even, that people who've grown up with the smells and aromas and things that we try to have in our wines will recognise. You know, some real wine for English people and Cornish people. You know, not something which we're trying to. You know, people often say to me, you know, why don't you export to here or export to there? Well, I actually want English people to drink this.
Absolutely.
I want it to be our wine, a wine of England.
And have you seen a trend since the GFC that more British people are drinking English wine rather than champagne?
Definitely.
Where do you see that going?
I don't know. I think that where we have an advantage is that if it's champagne, it's difficult to choose what level you should be buying for an occasion. You know, if it's the Millennium, for example, it's no good turning up with a bottle of $9.99 own label.
Yep.
You've got to look beyond that, and then you get into a territory of uncertainty for people, where they've got to make a decision and be judged by others what champagne they've bought. They've got to make it gets very complicated. If they pick up a bottle from their local vineyard and winery in England, it's suddenly they're making a different statement, and it's a lot easier for them to make that choice, and it's a lot more interesting for people, because what most people don't realise is there's only 2 million bottles or 3 million produced every year
of English sparkling wine.
Of English wine altogether. So it would take 20 years to give everybody in Britain one bottle. So hardly anybody in England's tasted this stuff yet. So there's a real little niche here, not in just, I can sell it because it's curious, but we can take it to people because it's interesting. And also, if it's got a good track record, it's good too. Interesting and good is much better than I spent a lot on this bottle of champagne.
Yes, I agree. Tell me about your flagship wine that we just tasted, what you call your wedding wine. I thought that was quite fascinating.
Well, I like that because it is very English. The pioneers of the last 60 years worked on these grapes, and a lot of people are trying to throw them out with the bathwater. And I'm trying to miss out this step that a lot of countries have done, where they suddenly find, I love New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc as a good example. But actually, people in New Zealand are trying to be distinctive now and look at other grape varieties because everyone's growing Sauvignon Blanc. I'm trying to cut out that step and stick with our traditional varieties. They haven't survived 60 years for a fluke. They've survived 60 years because they produce, people have liked them, they've persevered with them, they've wanted to grow them, and we're going to carry on growing them.
Tell me about that grape variety, though, its flavour profile, its characteristics, the one that's...
Well, I think Sauvignon Blanc is like Sauvignon Blanc without the complexity.
Okay.
It's which actually for sparkling wine is quite good.
This is why Joanna Simon says you're the answer to England's answer to Sancerre.
Yeah, it could be that. It could be the reason. I don't know. But Sauvignon Blanc was produced by Dr. Save and Dr. Viard in some French research station years ago. Nobody really knows what those original grape varieties that they took them from were. But I do know they were grown in the Loire. So it's quite likely that there's some connection between some of the other grape varieties that everyone knows. But the taste and flavour profile of Sauvignon Blanc is very much like Sauvignon Blanc, but without all of those extra sort of exotic fruit flavours that characterises Sauvignon Blanc. So some people said, well, it's neutral. Well, neutral is quite good for sparkling wine.
Yes.
You don't want to be overtaken by grape variety flavours in sparkling wine. You want to have room for the champagne flavours to drop down.
And in terms of its colour, it reminds me of a Fox's Glacier Mint. I've never seen a sparkling wine quite like it.
It's interesting.
Quite exotic and different.
Do you know, the odd thing about Sauvignon Blanc is, even if you make a reductive bottle, if you leave it 10 years, you'll have straw-coloured Chardonnay style look. It's really weird. Even if it's not oxidised, it will look yellow.
Wow.
It goes completely yellow. It's quite amazing.
Interesting. And it's the only English sparkling wine that's stocked as an own label for Fortnum and Mason.
It is, yeah.
Excellent, well done. That's
because they're
fantastic.
very into Englishness as well. And so, look, English people are always trying to pretend they're not English and trying to play themselves down and trying not to put themselves forward. Well, let's just do it, and celebrate that we are got a few things to be proud of.
Do you find lots of customers in the city, the kind of bankers and the brokers who maybe were drinking champagne and then decided they shouldn't really be drinking champagne and they should be supporting the local economy?
Well, weddings, definitely. Weddings for English people now is the first thing you look for. Because again, it takes all of the decision making away. You don't have to be an expert, you just have to have a connection. If you're getting married in our village or a town near us or in Truro or whatever, it makes so much sense to have that on the table. It's so interesting. I mean, my daughter's getting married and we've got obviously our own sparkling wine. We've also got line-caught Cornish sea bass. Well, it probably doesn't taste that much different from netted sea bass from the Atlantic Ocean somewhere else. But the thing is, we want to
support local producers.
Well, not support it, we just want to have it. We just want to identify with our local producers. It's just nice to be part of a food and drink community. And I think that more and more that feeling is spread through the whole of society and not just producers.
I think that's a really good concept. Now, with regard to other parts of the English wine industry, for example, Nye Timber and Ridgeview, they started off pretty small, but they're kind of going down a different path, aren't they, and looking more for industrial size growth. So do you think that England could be a threat to champagne in the future?
I don't think so. I mean, personally, my approach to all this is that, to put it simply, if you look at something like Chateau Margaux, you can visit it 100 or 200 years after they started getting a reputation. You won't find a lean-to on the winery, and you won't find that they bought extra vineyards around and about. Basically what they've done is maintain their reputation, maintain their supply, and they've raised their price through scarcity and through reputation. And for me, I think that's the way forward if you want to be in it for the long term. If you want to test the market with a couple of million bottles of English sparkling wine and try and export it, it's a new area. I have exported to Japan, but I'm not into bulk
Yep.
wine. I'm into trying to have some connection with what you do, really. And I don't mean that at all disrespectfully to the people you mentioned, because they're both very good producers. They're excellent wine, and I'm sure they'll be very successful. But from where we are, it's not how we see ourselves. You know, I look across. You look around the world now when I see all the really good wine regions that are having difficulties. When you've got massive volumes, it's very hard to shrink as fosters and conservation farming.
Yes.
But when you've stayed a size that's economic and built up a reputation and a price, your price can come down a little, but you still don't care because you're not concentrating on volume. So I think for longevity you need to not concentrate on volume.
Do you not think also, though, that to increase your business, though, you might need to diversify in other areas, and what might they be?
No, not at all. I think our USP, if you like, is that we don't do that. We just do wine. Come here, you try wine. You want a breadstick, you can have one. You want a packet of crisps, maybe.
Yeah.
But you
And
can't
it's homemade. The breadstick's homemade
Yeah,
as well.
it is. And I often say to people that if we had a restaurant here, you wouldn't better get here.
Yeah.
It would be full because this is the busiest tourist area in the country. And if we had a restaurant here with this lovely view, it would be booked, which would mean a small number of people can come. Well, tonight on the tour, what do we have? 70 people?
Yeah.
And we've had several, maybe a couple of hundred through the day of people having a glass of wine on the terrace and a packet of crisps. So they're in contact with the wine, the terrace and the vineyard, open to everybody.
And meeting the makers as well.
No booking, meeting us all day long. We do all the family tours. Every tour of the day is done by a family member.
And you're open 6 days a week, aren't you?
Yeah, Monday to Saturday.
Wow.
And we do afternoon tours, evening tours. But you know, we can't say that you'll never not get a member of the family because we could be sick like anybody else. But ordinarily, if it's not us, it will definitely be a winemaker. It won't be some tour guide who doesn't know what we're doing here. It will always be a winemaker.
That's fantastic. One last question for you. As somebody that makes sparkling wine, you must obviously be quite familiar with the flavours in champagne. What's your favourite champagne? And why?
Well, I don't think I have a favourite because I like the diversity of it. I like the story of Blanc. You know? I do like that story when you go there. I like the concept of Madame Blanc and all that. And I think so many people get hung up thinking that a bottle of wine is just a comparative flavour to another bottle, and it really isn't. The enjoyment of wine is so much more than how it tastes. I mean, it's got to taste good, but once it tastes good, the enjoyment is in all the things to do with it, which may be the history, you know. And Madame Blanc, I actually find that quite intriguing and quite interesting. So, you know, if you ask me what my favourite is, maybe I have a bottle of Blanc, whatever it tastes like. You know, and when I've been to Champagne recently, I went to Vitef, and I was lucky enough to go to the growers' dinner. And I tasted no end of champagnes. You know, some were nice. I mean, they were all nice, really, one way or another. Once you got past the sipping point, but what you go away with is you think, well, I like that group of people. I like that building. You know, I like that one. Madame, you know, Blanc is a great example. I like that old house. I love those little vines that are close together in that garden. You know, and that will make it taste nicer. I don't care what anybody says.
So it's all the memories and all the anecdotal stories associated with it.
If it doesn't taste nicer for you when you know that, then you know you're an anorak in wine. And you're not really into wine. You're into train spotting. Once you start scoring everything you taste and comparing everything you taste, and let it not actually be about the place, the people, the area, the region, the history. Once you get past that, you've lost it.
I really like the winemaking.
Yep.
And I like the sort of engineering, technical side of it, and getting everything right, because I do honestly believe that, you know, it is all in the grape, and so many, you know, we've tasted a lot of wine in tanks that's really great, but something falls down between there and getting it in the bottle and everything. I think that's something that we like to think that we do well.
So you're pretty hot on the technical side. You've also got a lot of individuality in your wines as well.
Yep.
Tell me more about your wedding wine. I thought that was quite delicious.
In the Brut, I think it's made with Seyval and Reichensteiner. I think it's something that, you know, Seyval is a grape variety that grows really well in this climate. And I think, you know, people are planting Chardonnay and Pinot Noir and getting better yields, but we get, you know, a really good yield with Seyval. And I think it, and like you say, it has an individuality that other people don't have. And I think that's really important when you're making wine. So it's nice in its own right. It has flavours that I think people associate with England, and it sounds a silly thing to say, but everyone likes it.
Yeah.
No one adds lemonade to it at weddings or anything like that. Everyone likes it, and I think that's really important.
I think it's really great to drink British.